Hey, Neurofeedback moms. I am Miriam Bellamy. I am the mom who started this group, and I am the director of Whole Family Neurofeedback. This is 2-minute tidbits sharing digestible information about neurofeedback in 2 minutes or less. Many of us with complex kids work to implement food changes, and this can be an overwhelming process. It was in my family. And I'd like to share some wisdom from a colleague. She's a mom in the group. Her name is Kira Osseroff. She's a childhood feeding expert, a dear friend, and also an LCSW of almost 20 years. Kira says, I want people to think about not just the what of food, all that we should and shouldn't eat, all those lists we have. I oftentimes ask parents to step back for a minute, and rather than focusing on the what, focus on the how. And what Kira is referring to there is that it is via food and feeding that we develop our very first relationships. How does the child communicate hunger cues? Can they recognize hunger cues? When there's been trauma or multi-generational trauma, or when there are health issues, this can get pretty complicated and jumbled up in the child. And how do we respond? Part of the how and the core of this 2-minute tidbit today is the idea of nourishment. That when the joy goes out of eating, nutrition actually suffers. And Kira shares that the research shows conclusively that we absorb more nutrients when we enjoy the experience of eating. So how do we get to nourishment? How do we get to enjoyment? Forget about feeding your kids for now, right? And getting enjoyment with them. How do you do that for yourself? Can you set aside the what I should and shouldn't eat? This can still be challenging for me, but and for me, when I do that and I just want to get to enjoyment, it's a piece of gluten-free toast with butter on it. Doesn't that sound good? And I feel better. So how do you get to nourishment, right? And how can you make that the most important thing? Consider neurofeedback not just for your child, but for the whole family to support you in this process. Eating and feeding get to pretty core issues for all of us, and it might take some time and some effort. But in my family, neurofeedback has been essential. I'm going to put a link down below for a podcast that Kira and I did a couple of years ago. It's one of the most substantive podcasts I've ever done. What Kira has to share about feeding yourself and feeding your family is super practical and super helpful. So I know I've gone over a little bit. Thanks for tuning in today.